Hi, good evening, and welcome everybody to tonight. I want to say that I'm so grateful for everybody showing up. I know for many people, this year has just been a bunch of different opportunities for growth that can sometimes be more than what we anticipated. And these circles for me make sure that I stay dedicated to my own studies and to keep aligning to the positive. So I want to say thank you for not just being here for yourself, but for us. I think it's really important before we even get started, as it is the last day of November and tomorrow is December, that this is when a lot of feelings of should start to arrive, where we start to feel that pull of time on us and we start to look back at maybe things that we wanted to cultivate, habits we wanted to incorporate into our daily lives, maybe experiences we were intending on manifesting that didn't happen. And I think it's really important to remember that though we've gotten used to the situation we've been in, we as a world, a entire world of billions of people have had our lives completely changed. And I think that is really important to keep as we move through the meditations and through the journals, a center of compassion for yourself. I've always loved the saying, don't should all over yourself, because whatever happened should have happened. Whatever has brought you to this point is a combination of your experiences and other people's experiences, and whatever happened between you guys, that's where you were in that moment. And that's all you can do. And instead of looking back to the past, throughout this workshop, we'll instead be investigating what can we do moving forward. There's no point in looking back and saying, I wish I did this, I wish I did that. Instead, finding a deeper understanding of ourselves and maybe some of the energetic pulls or tendencies that happen to us that cause us to react in a manner that maybe isn't what we would have chosen is more important. So just notice if you go through the workshop, if any questions start to bring up a feeling of disappointment in yourself, just pause, take a deep breath, and remember that all we can do is our best. And right now you're putting aside an hour and 30 minutes to learning and to working on being a better person. And I think that that is the very best you can do. So from me to you, just no stressing, let's relax and enjoy. So I'm going to share my screen with you. For those of us who were not here the last full moon circle, that was the hunter's moon. Let me open this up for us. And that was us investigating how in ancient times, the hunter's moon symbolized a time where we were moving into winter, where scarcity was coming and you need to go out and hunt for the food sources that are going to sustain you through a leaner time. Well, in this day and society, we're really blessed that most of us, especially in America, we don't have to go out foraging for our own food. Instead, what we get to do is go look for our purpose. In our last full moon circle, we were talking about creating a life that worked for us. And in this full moon circle, we'll be discussing a little bit about what in your environment could be preventing you from moving into that. So this moon is the Beaver full moon. It occurs in the zodiac of Gemini. So Gemini has a few different mythological backgrounds. There's two basic understandings that are very similar. One is the ancient Greek philosophy, and one is more of a Roman twist on it. But it both talks about two twins that were born, and they're half brothers. And one twin is mortal, he's completely man, and he represents the human of all of us. And the other twin was half divine. His father was a god in the ancient Greek mythology. Zeus was his father, of course, and he had immortality due to his father. They went throughout life completely joined at the hip, protecting each other, battling together, facing life's experiences together, until the human brother ended up getting a mortal wound. Now, the gods had no interest in this. He's just a human. It doesn't matter. This is a way of life. It's a cycle. but his twin brother went and petitioned on his behalf and asked to share some of his immortality with his brother. And then that is where they're represented in the constellation. If you look at the picture, those are the two conjoined stars representing twins that are sharing with each other. Now, these twins also represent the human, which is the mortal, and then the being of a human being. That would be the twin that has a divine father. And it's this idea of, yes, we are this human physical being, but there's also some special spark within us all that gives us a higher purpose, that sets us apart from animals that are just trying to survive, into humans that we don't just take our cues from the environment, but we directly affect and can create our own environments that work better for us. The twins also can be related to the different sides of our personality. So the face that we show the world, and also the face we keep to ourselves. It can talk about the relationship we maybe have within ourselves, the parts of us that we love and we want to hold in light, and the parts of us that we want to deny and we don't want to take a look at, and we bury deep down inside. This is also going to be the last full moon before the winter solstice. And some of the other names it was referred to as digging or scratching or foraging full moon. So this relates to animals at this time of year when the ground is beginning to freeze over, that start to scratch, looking for fresh shoots that maybe that deer can eat, or for like a hidden thing of acorns that squirrels has buried. And again, that's the idea of looking to your environment for ways that it can support you, looking past what immediately comes to the eye. So when you're looking at the ground, you're just seeing frost, and knowing that there's something there for you and actively going after it. So to briefly go over some concepts that we spoke about in the last circle is Samvega. So Samvega is actually a complicated set of emotions that I feel tends to bring most people to yoga. So it can be something in life that completely derails you and makes you realize, oh wow, there's something much bigger here, that I'm living my life, but I'm not actually living it. I'm just responding to all these stimuluses that are happening around me. I'm not staying in my own space. We also use the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra. So this mantra was about relating to the inner Buddha, the inner heart of compassion that resides within us all. So each syllable of the mantra represented a different part of way of cleansing the mind and the spirit, getting rid of any of those vibrations of greed, of anger, of negativity, and coming truly to that positive present center at the center of us. What's interesting about that mantra is that it relates to the lotus, the Buddha, and the Buddha actually prophesies that the next Buddha, which means enlightened being, will be the Sangha, will be community. So we often speak about power in numbers. You see this in partners where two people team up in order to bring a child into the world and support them and start a life. We see that in football and sports teams. We see this in political systems, democratic, republic, libertarian. You see this all throughout, where we have this deep-seated belief that more is better. And I'm not necessarily saying that's true, but the Buddha said that maybe in the future, a community of people will come together. And this community of enlightened people will begin to actively start spreading the love and compassion into the world around them. And this will start to affect how the community relates to each other. I personally find this really beautiful because in our Western society, which tends to be very individualistic and tends to be very focused on creating, what am I doing, what am I driving, do I have a good job, this instead really talks about our responsibility to the world at large, that our lives are not just for us, but also our lives affect the experience of the world and others around us. So the sister emotion to Samvega is Pasada. So Samvega, maybe you have experienced when you've lost someone close to you or lost a job that you put a lot of identity in. Pasada is the sense of clarity that comes after. It's this sense of knowing exactly what you want and what you don't want. And even if you can't picture what your purpose is or where you want to be in 20 years, it's this confidence that you have found a way to make a difference and change, that you will not fall back asleep, that you will stay awake to the life you're creating. So how you can cultivate these feelings is, number one, through meditation. Meditation, taking that time to listen to yourself, to notice the thought patterns that are coming up. This helps move you into a space where you're less reactive and you can influence and keep the momentum of your own emotion. The cartoon up there is another way of cultivating pasada. You have the ability to choose what you want to hear. So if the news, which is going to constantly inundate you with negativity and how the world is falling apart and how we are in this unending cycle where it's just getting worse and worse and no one can hear each other, you can turn that off. You can turn that off and walk outside into your own neighborhood and say hello to your neighbor and experience that relationship and see, is that reflective of what the media is telling you? You can choose your TV shows differently, choosing positive growth shows, maybe a sweet comedy that you know isn't going to emotionally jack you up and jack you down, take you on a roller coaster. This year's been roller coaster enough. I don't think we need to actively go after taking ourselves into super emotional states. Something that's important to distinguish is that samvega is not the same thing as suffering. So the word for suffering in Sanskrit is dukkha. It's the idea of the wheel of suffering. So if a wheel's going on and has like a brake and an axle, every time it goes around, it kind of goes thunk, thunk. And so that thunk, that's the suffering that is inherent within life. Samvega is separate from that, and samvega is a responsible reaction to the reality of the suffering of others around you. Now, these feelings, when they start to come up, if you don't have an outlet for them, you can be left feeling really isolated. And it's important to start to look to the community around you and just be aware, do the people in your inner circle, are they experiencing these emotions? Have they had something that's woken them up and given them this drive? It's beautiful that in Eastern societies, they have monastic ways that are set up to support those people who would like to dive deeper into their spiritual practice. I know for most of us living in America, it would be a great privilege just to go on a 10-day meditation retreat. It's a privilege to get to take a day off from your phone, from the emails, from the responsibilities, from people asking of you. And so if we don't have a society, Western society is not built up between this symbiotic relationship between the spiritual and the community. So you have to cultivate that on your own. So in monastic Buddhist religions, monks are supported by the community with food and shelter and clothing. And in return, they share their lessons to the people around them, and they help the society from falling into despair, from falling into being numbed by media, being numbed by the day-to-day grind of life, and remembering, oh, there's a reality beyond all of this. There is something deeper beyond the responsibility that's put on us on a day-to-day basis. Hello, when you begin to look at your community, others people's perceptions of you affects you. We've spoken often about how what we see in the world is not the actual reality of what is. How when we look at a cup, we don't see the cup for the fact that it's a cup. We see it and look at it by, oh, I know this is glass, which means this cup is breakable. I'm going to hold on to it. Oh, this cup is not going to insulate heat well, so I won't put heat in it. As you're looking at an object, all these past experiences are flooding up into the mind, and they're changing the way you see the world. Now, when you're speaking to a person, they're doing the same thing to you. The two number one things of the brain that take up mental energy is movement and just like digestive processes that are happening in the body automatically. And the second is learning. And what we've learned is that energy will always take the path of least resistance. And so if learning takes a lot of mental energy, that means the brain, it doesn't always want to learn. So when you're meeting and interacting with someone, your brain is going back to all your past experiences with this person, all your past experiences with people similar to this person, all the experiences of maybe the environment or the emotions that you're feeling, going to the subconscious of that. And the brain is just going to categorize and put a perception on someone. And so as you're moving through the world, all these people are putting identities and their perceptions on you. On work, you may have an identity. Think about the word engineer. What does that bring to mind? It probably brings to mind industrious, productive, mechanically minded. You see how all these labels start to bubble up. So if you have your journal, we'll be doing a little bit of a journaling exercise just to start to become aware of how other people's perceptions could be affecting you. So taking your journal, I want you to write down the name of someone in your family who you feel really safe with, someone whose opinion values most to you and that you think influences your life. And next to that person's name, I'd like you to write one word that immediately comes to mind when you think of them. So if you visualize their face, what word comes to mind? And then thinking of your interactions with them, what words or identities do you think they hold of you? What word do you think they'd use to describe you? And then maybe thinking of the last time you and this loved one had a disagreement. What was the crux of the disagreement? So was it that you expressed a boundary that made them uncomfortable? Did they express a boundary that made you uncomfortable? Can you kind of try to find, was there an unspoken agreement between you two that was broken? And if you can't think of that now, maybe just write down a brief description of what happened and then go back to it later. Because if this is someone that you love and that influences you, you most likely don't want to be having disagreements with them. So being able to discover, oh, is there something unspoken between us that is causing tension? And so below this, I'd like you to write down the name of a boss or a coworker. If possible, unless you are in a management position, someone who has a little bit of authority over you. And then next to their name, write down the emotion that first comes to mind or that you tend to experience with them. And next to that, write down how you think they would describe you. How do they view you? And below that, you have an option to either do a friend or you can use acquaintances and kind of begin to investigate how do you think you're portraying yourself that other people are perceiving you. So if you'd like to do a friend, you'd write your friend's name. You would write the emotion that comes out of you when you immediately think of their name, and then how you think they view you. Or an acquaintance, you can skip maybe how you feel about them and simply go to how do you think people who just slightly know you view you. Perfect. So relating this to the beaver, it's really interesting because the beaver in the mythology has a couple different perceptions, and it really depends on the tribe that is describing them. And this really relates to how people see you is really dependent on them. For an example, there is this idea of an eager beaver. I don't know if anyone's been called that before, but that has a negative connotation. Someone who's actively trying to please, or maybe cares a little bit too much or tries a little bit too hard. And when you really think about that, that is talking about someone's vulnerability, that someone actually cares, and instead we're putting them down for caring. And on the other side, you can think about beavers, busy as a beaver, which would be more of a positive connotation. So thinking industrious, hardworking. These are all different ways of explaining the same thing. And so there will be multiple different people in your life that will have different ways of looking at you. And what we've learned is that just as you influence the environment, how someone's perceiving you is going to influence how you show up in that moment. So if someone is coming to you and they see you as someone who is a yes person, someone who always is willing to do the extra mile or take the extra step, it may not occur to them in that moment that you are overscheduled, that you maybe energetically are not in a place to meet them where they're asking. And because they think of you as this yes person, in their mind, when they're asking you the question, they may not even be phrasing it as a question, or their energy may make it very apparent to you what answer they expect. And then that brings up emotional feelings within you and may cause you to act and react in a manner that wasn't necessarily what you chose. I'm going to move it over to Katie, but we'll start to investigate our reactions to saying yes to things we don't want to do, or overschedule, or letting others influence our path and direction. So moving to Katie.
Thank you, Anna. That was a really awesome recap too from our last full moon. I always appreciate when you do that, because I always love how each full moon threads together with the energetic connections that we're noticing and what we explore through the journaling exercises, through the mantra, through the meditations. It just feels like each time it links directly into the next workshop. So it's really cool. So I actually want to pull up some slides as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about, hold on one second. All right, there we go. Sorry, you'd think I'd be good at this by now. So finding the idea of essentialism. And so I don't know if anyone else has read this book in this group or not. I have read this book a couple times this year, and my whole intention for this year was to simplify my life. And I think the world just kind of laughed at me when I said that intention, because this has been nothing but this has not been a simple year at all. But I feel like the challenge of finding the essential in all of the non-essential this year has been a challenge worth accepting, because it really allowed me to make choices that not only benefited me, but also the people around me. And so what is essentialism anyways? Some of you may be like, I didn't read the book, I have no idea what you're talking about. So if you Google essentialism, there's really not a whole lot that comes up, surprisingly. I'm not sure why this isn't a more practiced idea, but it's the disciplined pursuit of less. And those are the words, right off of the book cover by Greg McKeown. I don't know how to say his last name correctly, so forgive me for that. But he is the author of Essentialism. And in the book, he talks about finding what's important in your life and keeping that the priority. And that is way easier said than done, because if you're anything like me, you probably have a lot of things that you want to be doing, a lot of people that are important to you. You could have a job or multiple jobs or hobbies, activities, kids, cousins, just anything that takes up your time. And how do you even decide what's the most important or what's the most essential? But if you've been like me this year, getting sucked up into the stream of non-essential chaos that has kind of been thrown at us, then you'll probably relate to feeling overwhelmed or perhaps lethargic, burnt out. I know we talked about that a little bit in the last few workshops about, self-care, really giving back to the self. But part of getting burnt out and feeling drained is because it's easy to just say yes to all these opportunities and to all these people and go, 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 and keep, going down your list of things that you want to accomplish and do, that you kind of lose sight of what is the most important and what you really want to be focusing your energy on. And I actually hit a wall with this myself right around the time that I got my surgery this year. And so for those of you that don't know, I got a jaw surgery done. It was a pretty invasive surgery, and it had me on bed rest for a few weeks. I was not able to do a lot of the same things that I was used to doing. So it really allowed me to sit still and think about certain things that I didn't really have time to think about before. And the reason I didn't have time to think about it before is because I never actually scheduled in time for stillness, time to reflect for that long of a period of time, that I didn't realize I had no idea what was essential to me. So I had this idea that I could have it all and do it all and, be friends closely with all of the people I know. And it's just like, it's not possible. There's only so much time in a day, and there's only so much of your energy to give out. And it was really hard for me to come to a decision on what things I had to let go of. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I love this graphic. I found this on the Google, of course, and I wanted to give the person down here credit. I love the little visual that they give us. I'm going to turn this because I have someone here that I want her to see. She's in the same room as me viewing the workshop. So is it hyperactivity or productivity? And this is a question that I have to ask myself every single day. So maybe you'll ask yourself this question now too. But there is a huge difference between hyperactivity and productivity. So being productive is having a mission, having few priorities, saying yes slowly, right? Productive people don't just quickly say yes, but they take a moment to think about it. Productive people are okay with closing doors and saying no to opportunities. So I'm sure you've heard that expression, FOMO, fear of missing out. And it's such an interesting term because the fear of missing out actually makes you miss out, because you're so much sitting in fear of missing out that you're missing out on the chance to be present with a whole other opportunity that you just now completely pushed to the side. So, having the ability to discern what opportunities are worth going after and what opportunities are okay to leave to the side. Productive people also let their results do the talking. So they don't talk the talk and not walk the walk, but they walk the walk and other people usually talk the talk. So it's an interesting concept. Productive people make time for what's important, and they also know how to focus. And they, like I said, they take their time and they want other people to be effective, and they're ready to make changes. So on the opposite end of that, when we're talking about just hyperactivity or busy people, maybe you can relate to this. When you know you have something that you really have to do, there's a deadline on it, It could be something for work or something in your personal life. Maybe it's even Christmas shopping, since we're getting close to that. But you wait until the last second to do that, so you procrastinate. And instead of doing the task that you know is more important, you start cleaning out your closet. And like, you know, your closet's been a disaster for years, but today is the day you're going to clean out the closet and take on this big project. Or, you know, maybe today's the day that you do all your laundry and you do like 7 loads of laundry when it was only really essential to do 1 load, but those other 6 loads kind of took up your time and you didn't have to do the task that maybe you're avoiding wanting to do. So if anyone can relate to that, I know I am guilty of doing this sometimes. And when I notice it, I laugh at myself. And then I stop what I'm doing because I'm like, oh, I'm just being hyperactive now. I'm not doing anything important. And I try to focus my energy back onto the essential task. And if you actually sit with yourself and ask yourself, what is the most important thing I can be doing right now throughout the day? It's actually not that hard of a question to answer. You know, it's really easy to figure out what the most important thing to do is, but then it's about taking action to actually go do that task instead of put it off to the side, like, oh, I'll do it in a little bit. I have to do this first. No, just go ahead and get it out of the way, because you're going to feel a lot better if you get the most important thing done first. And then the rest of your day, you can kind of explore some different things that maybe weren't the most important. So if you're just being busy, then it just looks like you have a mission. It maybe means that you have a lot of priorities, which the word priority means single most important task. So just the fact that our society made the word priority plural means that there's something wrong, because it was never designed to be a plural word at all. So busy people say yes quickly. And that could be for when an employer or an employee, a coworker, when someone comes up and asks you to stop what you're doing and work on something different, and you really need to keep working on whatever it is you're working on, then it's about learning how to say no and being confident in yourself to say that no, knowing that that other person may get a little upset in the beginning, but over time, the respect that builds from you saying no, since you were telling them, honestly, I have something more important I need to be doing right now, that respect is going to feel a lot better than the initial high that we get from saying yes to someone. And there actually is science behind the rush of good feeling we get when we say yes to someone, when we please someone that we care about or please someone that we look up to. And it's really just like, you know, after a few seconds, you feel that crash, like, why did I do that? That was not a good idea to commit to that task or that project. So if you notice that maybe you're more of a busy person than a productive person, don't feel bad, because you're normal. And like I said, I have to check in with myself every single day and remind myself that more work does not equal more results. And that sometimes taking a break is being productive. You know, sometimes taking a break in the middle of the day to meditate and sit in silence and stillness is the productive thing to do. Because if you don't do that and you feel like you're crashing halfway through the day, and then you decide to drink coffee or an energy drink or snack on something that's supposed to give you some more energy, and then you kind of ride that wave up again and then crash back down, then your work or whatever project that you're doing may not end up as efficient or as well done as it could have been if you had just taken that time to pause, reflect, take deep breaths, and just sit in silence. You know, take a moment to cleanse your internal senses and your external senses from the overload that it experiences every day. So I love how Greg says in the book, discern the vital few from the trivial many. And I love this quote: non-essentialists get excited by virtually everything and thus react to everything. But because they are so busy pursuing every opportunity and idea, they actually explore less. And so you can think of this as, let's say when you have a stack of books that you want to read, let's say you have 5 books. A hyperactive or a non-essential person will try to read all 5 books as fast as possible, thinking, okay, if I read all these 5 books, I'm going to know so much. I'm going to be more intelligent. I'm going to get the most for the value of these 5 books if I just read them and learn all the information I can in the least amount of time. Now, the downside of doing this is that you don't actually have enough time to take notes or digest the information, take some time to apply that information to your life. So yeah, sure, you'll read through those 5 books and you'll get all this information, but then how much of that are you retaining and moving forward in your life, being able to practice from the books that you're reading? Versus a productive person will read one of the 5 books and take their time to read that book and take notes and highlight and make sticky notes to look back on and have questions and journal about it and talk to their friends about it and practice what they're reading. And they really take on this book. And the benefit of that is you actually absorb the information better. So it's better to take your time and do one thing very well than to do 5 things at a half-assed way. So, we can all really think about the things that we do in our life when we're multitasking and how they don't always end up getting done really well at the end. Like you'll see a typo in something that you're typing in an email if you're trying to email and text someone and listen to a podcast and talk to someone at the same time when there's too much going on. Then you realize that you're not really fully engaged in any of those tasks. You're kind of just weaving in and out of them, and you're not present with anything. So if you want to live intentionally, then you have to figure out what task or what idea is worth pursuing and which ideas and which tasks are worth just setting to the side for now. You don't have to never do them, but maybe just not right now. Oops. So if it's not a clear yes, then it's a clear no. And this is going to be a little bit hard for most of us to practice right away, because once again, we are in a society where we have a lot of choices, and sometimes refusing to make the choice is not really a clear yes. And you think that maybe you're like in this maybe stage, but if it's not a clear yes, then it's just a clear no. If you don't automatically want to say yes to something, then there's probably a reason why. And you should listen to that instinct in yourself and investigate why would I not immediately want to say yes to this? What was it holding me back? And should I say no, or should I look into this a little bit more? And a great way of saying no to somebody when they're asking you something and you're not sure how to say no is to say something like, let me check my schedule and I'll get back to you. Or let me think about that and see if I have any other commitments that coincide with this. So that way you have a little bit of buffer space to think about, do I want to take this opportunity? To think about if it's in line with the direction that you're going, to think about if it's essential for right now, or if it's better to leave it to the side. And if you're thinking about this in the sense of finding a new career, you could think, well, what do I enjoy doing? And what am I talented at? And would I be meeting a significant need in the community or in the world? And if you ask yourself these questions and you start to realize that, oh, maybe this isn't really the path that I want to go, then just let it be a clear no and move on. Because by saying no to something that's not really the right fit, you're actually creating space for more of what is the right fit. And that's really what essentialism is about, is making the space and carving out this path so that you really can just continue to move toward the goal that you're trying to reach, instead of having all these alter paths that, you're getting lost on and feeling like you're just walking around in circles at some points. So If you need to make a critical decision, apply strict criteria and fulfill those criteria by asking the right questions. And you can actually write down some generalized questions for different things, like for the job, or let's say for taking on a project or an opportunity to help a friend. For me, a good example is if somebody asks me about a teaching opportunity. Since I teach yoga, some of us on this call are yoga teachers, so you can relate to this. And it's important that, yes, you take opportunities that come at you, but you have to ask yourself, is this the right opportunity for me in this moment? And if you have the right questions laid out in front of you, you can just return to those same questions each time and let it just be a process where eventually you won't have to look at your notes or your journal to work through it. It'll just be ingrained in your head of this set of questions, to help you figure out if this is the right opportunity for you. So another idea that was talked about in this book was the zero-based ownership thought process. And this is talking more about things that we own and creating more space in our physical realm. So materialistic type ideas here. And I know that we talked about this too in a previous moon circle. I'm not sure which one it was, but the idea of getting rid of things that are no longer needed in our lives. So letting go of attachments to physical belongings, belief systems, anything that's weighing us down. And so a great question you can ask yourself is, let's say you're going through your closet or your garage, your basement, your attic full of stuff that you've just been holding on to for a long time. You can pick up each item and ask yourself, if I didn't already own this, would I still buy it? I mean, it's a simple question. And if you were to buy it, how much would you spend on it? And something interesting that happens when we ask the question, how much would I spend on this if I didn't already own it? It kind of makes you realize that maybe I wouldn't spend as much money as I thought I would on this item. Maybe I can get rid of it. Maybe I'm not going to miss out on this item being in my life if I, think I need it in a few years, because realistically, you could probably just go buy it again, unless it's something super special, in which case maybe you'd keep it. But, if you hadn't already invested money and energy into something, like a project, a business idea, learning a new skill, would you continue to do it? I mean, that's a good question too. I mean, for those of us that have tried to go on a different career path, maybe in the beginning stages of our adulthood, and we were really set on, this is what I'm going to do for my life. Maybe you went through 4 years of college or a trade school. Maybe you went all the way through your master's process to do something that you thought you wanted to do. But then you get to the end of it and then you start to work in that field and you realize, oh, I don't know if this is really for me. So something that you can ask yourself is, would I still want to do this if I didn't already invest the time and money? And I think our culture puts this pressure on us to just keep moving forward in the direction that we've been doing. But these are important questions that we need to ask ourselves, even with relationships. If you hadn't already spent time and energy in a relationship, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship even, would you restart that same relationship today? And these are hard questions. So, you don't have to explore all of them right now. And if you want to write some of these down, you certainly can, but I plan to share these slides with you after the workshop. So you can always look back at these at a later time and really start to pick apart some areas of your life that maybe could use a little bit more work right now, and maybe could create a little bit more space. And in doing that, you can start to see what is most essential, what is most important, what do you want to put your time and energy into? Because there is not that much time in the day. We really are only awake for about 16 hours if you get a full 8 hours of sleep at night. A lot of us work, an 8-hour job, and then we commute to and from work 5 days a week, some people more. So when you get down to the nitty-gritty of how much time we have it's not a lot. And so asking yourself what's essential is really going to start to free up some space for you. And it may not feel comfortable in the beginning, but I promise that it's worth it. So I'm going to pass it back to Anna.
Thank you, Katie. One of the things, I never liked economics in high school, but one of the only lessons that I retained from ages ago was what Katie was speaking about with sunk costs. And it's something my family tries to remember and utilize often, of that when you've already invested in something, you're not going to get that investment back. And by just putting in more, you're losing more versus just cutting your losses and moving on. So the idea of, if you've ever gone to a movie and you immediately do not like the movie and 10 minutes goes by, you don't like it, 20 minutes goes by, you are still not enjoying it, 30 minutes goes by, you know that this movie is just not your thing. And a lot of people will just sit there and they won't change their environment. They won't make a choice to let themselves out because of the $10 they invested in the movie. But what is $10 compared to an hour and a half of your time and energy that you could have spoken with a loved one or gone on a walk under the beautiful moon like we have tonight? And so that's something, as you go through Katie's journaling practices, you can really try to remember that whatever time or energy or money that was invested into something, if that's not the outcome you want anymore, it doesn't matter. Just let it go, aparigraha, non-grasping, and just trust that by letting that go, what you're really doing is letting something else come back. And something, especially when it comes to changing jobs or career paths, is that this idea of lack. This world is so abundant and infinite. I mean, the earth has produced who knows how many species of plants and animals. We always see growth. There's always more. And so by not letting go of something that's not meant for you, you're preventing the person who actually would really enjoy it, who would resonate 100% with that space, with that identity. You're preventing them from taking that. And you're also preventing yourself from moving into a space that you more enjoy. So those are definitely great things to begin to investigate as we move through December, before we start January with our whole new slew of New Year's resolutions. So one of the things that really, the thing that holds us back from making changes is fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure. And what's interesting about the studies of yoga is how they conceptualize fear as beginning. So I'm going to share this. In yogic philosophy, there's this world samskaras. And samskaras are impressions that form within our subconscious. And their seeds have been planted into our subconscious that then, when they're activated by some sort of stimulus, turns into an impression. So a lot of times when we're moving through life and we're having reactions, we think we're making the choice right then. But in reality, a fear in us is being stimulated, which is causing an emotional sensation to arise. Our body is then interpreting that emotional signal and reacting. The body then speaks to the brain, and the brain takes this emotion, this bodily sensation, goes back to all the experiences in life that remind it of this time. And then that is what your perspective and reaction is based off of. So when we encounter a situation that resonates with a particular emotion, that emotional state gets triggered. And we don't have to actually remember that memory in a way that we can bring it up. It's the emotional quality that still exists within us. This produces, when this emotional quality is triggered, this produces another thought that is similar to the parent thought that you may have forgotten that came from the original memory. And so this begins the cycle of how we get hardened into certain patterns of negative thinking, because the emotion triggers the parent thought, which produces a new thought, which produces another emotion. And it's just a never ending cycle. This turns into habits, and that talks about hardening our consciousness. So instead of being open and free, open-minded, and ability to be fluid in change, you become very singular focused, and you don't have space for other worldviews. And samskara also means impurity. And so it's important to realize that even if the samskara is producing a reaction that you think is positive, it's still an impurity. So if you think about it like a chain, it doesn't matter if the chain is gold, which you may think of positive, or the chain is iron, which you may think of as less expensive. They're both chains. They're both tethering you and holding you into an illusion that's not real. So the brain is in constant dialogue with itself. And what the brain is predicting is not just based on your personal experiences, it's also predicting based on the experiences of everyone around you. So the stories your father and mother have told you, the movies that you've seen, the books that you've read, the media you consume, opinions of friends. The list goes on and on and on. We are never just creating by ourselves, we're also creating with the perceptions of other people. And I think we can all know what it is to experience high vibrational friends and thinking and low vibrational friends and thinking. I think we know what it's like to have those group of friends where you go and maybe you're talking about an issue that you're having, and instead of them saying, oh, woe is you, yeah, that's so tough, instead they only see you as conquering that. They only see, as we talked about, that divine lotus, they see beyond the illusion of the samskaras that are preventing you from seeing the right path forward, and they're able to hold that space for you. On the other hand, I think we've also experienced going to people, maybe venting about a partner, and you love your partner. This is the person you want to spend your life with. And instead of that person just holding space for you, instead they start to talk about maybe their relationship and all the ways it went wrong and someone cheated on them. And yes, men or women are scum, or they're this and they're that. And you feel your vibration lowering, and you actually start to take that person's beliefs and put them on your partner. And then you go home, and next thing you know, you're having an argument, and that was never your intention. This is why it's so important to realize the people that we bring our vulnerabilities to. Are they truly someone that can hold that space for us? Are they truly someone that can help us find the root cause of that fear and help you move past it? An excerpt from a book I'm reading that I thought was really beautiful is that we often associate thought with the mind and emotion with the heart. However, I prefer to view it as a heart-mind field, because there can be no emotion without thinking and no thinking without emotion. With spiritual and yogic practice, however, a time comes when the heart becomes completely unbiased, when it has no likes or dislikes, no preferences or prejudices. That's when the mind transcends thinking and becomes a mere witness, perceiving reality directly. Until then, our thoughts affect our heart, and the heart's activity produces thoughts in the mind. And that is what we were doing with the mantra of Om Mani Padma Hum. We were trying to rid ourselves of those negative vibrations that produce thoughts that are harmful, that produce thoughts that take us out of the heart space, out of that observer of just being able to be aware, oh, I feel tightness in the belly. Oh, I feel heat in the front of my face. I think anger is coming, versus someone who's directly experiencing those emotions. And how you know when your ego is involved and when you've come out of the heart space is
witness, there's nothing to react to. If you are the witness, simply it is what it is. It's only when the ego, who cares about identity, who cares about how others think and perceive, that is trying to protect itself, that causes the samskaras to really be produced. So they speak about these samskaras as trees in our consciousness. So like little neural pathways that are taking our energy and directing it in specific directions. There's another word called boga, and boga means life experiences. And this is nature's way
to unheart us and remove some of those impurities. So the thing with boga is that there is no positive or negative. Life experiences are here to wipe away the impressions in the mind. So if we react to the life experience, that will actually create another samskara, another little tree of fear that will bloom and start to spread. But if we can take a life experience, we can view it from the witness perspective, we're able to see how it not only just benefits us, but the community around. And sometimes situations that could be identified as negative in reality are the catalyst for our biggest change. When we spoke about Samvega, most of the time what produces that emotion is not something positive. It's some sort of huge life-altering moment that you never can go back to the person you were beforehand. But most of us would not want to let that experience go because of the growth that it produces. It's really important to continually remember that in yogic philosophy, we are completely complete. It's not about trying to become something, it's about trying to release. And so nature is giving us the boga, it's giving us these experiences as a second chance, basically, to wipe away an impression where we misunderstood. Let me stop the share. Sorry. And with these life experiences, they cause emotional reactions within us. And one of the ways that this relates to the beaver full moon is that the beaver produces a dam. And so the dam is a safe shelter that the beaver can find refuge in when times are hard. So the dam can be representative of meditation, practices that we can use to fill up our cup to fill others, but also a time where we're isolating in order to protect ourselves. So in our journaling exercise, when we spoke about how people's view of us can affect how we feel about ourselves, we can also take this tendency a little bit too far when we start to assume we know how others are going to affect us. So I don't know if you can think about to a time when maybe you were feeling vulnerable, you woke up and it was gloomy and you just had a case of the blahs, and then maybe you forgot that you needed gas and so you were late to work, and just a series of negative situations begin to happen. When those moments, you can start to isolate like a beaver in its dam, or you can reach out to the community around you and try to find a better vibrational way of approaching things. So one of the things we speak about often is momentum. And so your emotions carry momentum, your actions start to carry momentum. But what can happen is if those around us have a stronger emotional strength or a momentum, they'll overwhelm us. And so the beaver in its dam is representative of when someone maybe comes at you with, let's say you have a new idea and a new adventure and you're really excited. And like a little kid, you come and you're so full of promise and excitement and what can be, but then this person just hits you with the reality of what is now and says, oh, well, that's going to be really hard. And you want to do that in the middle of a pandemic? Don't you know that there's employment is so on and high and we're going to go into a recession? And you'll feel the energy of your own being start to diminish. Your momentum will slow down. That fear will spark up. And that person will touch that samskara inside of you, that fear of failure. And who says that that fear is real in that moment? Maybe you've tapped into exactly what you're meant to do. Maybe you're moving in the direction of your dreams. And that person doesn't know the boga, the life experiences that you've had. That person doesn't know that you've experienced Sambhega, that you've had this great awakening, that you no longer see yourself as separate from the world, but as a cohesive part that's actively impacting all of the people around you. And so if you feel throughout your day that people are shifting you out of the energetic tone that you set for the day, be like a deep beaver. Go into your dam for just a few minutes. Set a timer for 3 minutes. Put on your favorite song. Dance it out. Maybe get out a piece of paper and write down the emotion that you're trying to cultivate over and over again, feeling it in your heart. Don't allow this person to shift your vibration so much that you stop aligning for what your goals are and start aligning to the reality that they're moving you towards. If you can remember that all of these life experiences, even failure, are part of you just trying to come back to the center of your being, it gives you a reservoir of strength, because the outcome doesn't really matter. It's the creating, it's how you feel in that actual moment. There's a beautiful poem that I love by Hafiz called With That Moon Language. And so if you'd like to maybe sit up a little bit straighter and close your eyes, admit something. Everyone you see, you say to them, "Love me." Of course, you do not do this out loud. Otherwise, someone would call the cops. Still, though, think about this great pull in us to connect. Why not become the one who lives with the full moon in each eye, that is always saying with that moon language what every other eye in the world is dying to hear? And I think the answer to that question of why we don't move through this world with more love is fear. It's fear of the love not being returned. It's fear of being wrong and having people look at you and judge you. It's fear of being alone, of being the only person to maybe take a stand in something you believe in. But when we begin to change our relationships to fear and realize that they're just these little seeds that have bloomed into a tree that you can choose to prune, you're giving yourself freedom to move into more of a space of love. And so with that, we will be switching over to Katie. She will continue.
Thank you so much for that, Anna. That was a beautiful quote that you shared, and how fitting about the full moons in both eyes. I really could picture that as I closed my eyes and felt those two full moons just really present behind my eyelids. So that was really cool visually for me. And I wanted to just touch on a little bit with the beaver idea, because since this is the beaver moon, and we were talking about sticking to essential tasks, I just had a thought that came into my mind that seemed so relevant. And beavers really do stay on target with their essential tasks. I mean, they pretty much spend the entire day searching for the little pieces of wood that they're going to use to make their dam. And they spend probably months doing that to get ready for the winter times and to have a place to retreat and go to for safety, for shelter, to store any food that perhaps that they're storing for the winter months. And it's just interesting to think about that, on how beavers really do have a tendency to stay busy, but also stay on task and stay on their essential target. So I do want to share my screen one more time just so that we can finish the slides from earlier. And I wanted to touch a little bit about setting clear boundaries. So whether it's at work or at home, with your family, with your friends, with your neighbors, with someone that you don't even know out in public, it's so important to set boundaries. And saying no is actually the most liberating thing ever. And when you can say no to someone, it's not a weakness. It's actually a strength. And it's an art, really, because the art of learning how to say no gracefully is challenging. Sometimes when we say no, it doesn't come out right and it could sound a little aggressive. Sometimes our no's can sound a little wimpy and unsure. But finding a way to say no to a person that you trust or that you know is a very liberating thing. So I invite you to do the same thing with this idea. Maybe write down later on this evening or anytime this week, write down some ways that you can say no to tasks or questions or commitments that maybe you have a tendency to say yes to, and figure out a way to say no so that you're not really offending the other person, but you're still getting your point across. And that is setting a clear boundary. And not only are you setting the boundary for that moment, but if you stay consistent with your no's in a way that makes sense, if you have reasoning behind your no's that link up with other reasonings, then over time you're developing consistency in those relationships with people, and your yes or your lack of saying yes won't really offend the other person as much. They'll actually respect you for it. And I know I mentioned that before, but I just really think it's worth saying again, because I know in the moment when you're saying no to someone, it feels icky and you're questioning it. And it's like, oh, I don't know, I really want to help this person, or maybe I can squeeze it in. But even just thinking those things, maybe I can squeeze it in, that's already a red flag that you don't have the time for it. And when you squeeze in something, you're actually taking away time from something else. So we can't have it all. We can't do it all. And setting boundaries makes it very easy to stay on target with what is important to you. And if you don't set your own boundaries, someone's going to set them for you. So you're going to have, priorities, whether you set them or whether someone else sets them for you. So if you think of it that way, it's a lot easier to start figuring out what's important to you. So doing less but better. And this is important to think about in all areas of life. So whether you're at work, whether you're at home, your goals that you're trying to reach, start to ask yourself, how many projects are you working on right now? How many people are depending on you? How strong do you commit to each part of your job, your home life, your goals? How many chores do you have? How many commitments do you have? Do you ask for help? How many goals are you working on in your business life, in your health and wellness, maybe fitness related, relationships? What are you trying to learn right now? And, if your brain's already racking around a little bit like, oh yeah, I'm kind of doing a lot of things, then this slide is for you, because doing less but better is actually going to give you the best results over time. And I know it's hard to choose sometimes when we have so many things that we like to do or we like to learn, but if you could just focus and channel your energy into just less is more. And I really believe in this idea. I'm still trying to do it in my own life, but I hope that this inspires you to maybe do it in yours too. So I wanted to share a couple journaling prompts with you that you could actually take a few moments here in this moment to reflect on. And so if you don't already have your journal out, go ahead and grab it and your pen, and you can read the slides and I'll repeat them as well out loud. How many commitments do you currently have right now? And you can say a number, or you can say words like too many. How many commitments do you have right now? This could be work-related commitments. It could be commitments to yourself, to a parent, a partner, a child, a pet. And what commitments do you wish you didn't have? So maybe out of the things that you just thought of, maybe you wrote them down. Are there any on that list that maybe you wish you didn't have? Maybe you said yes to something when you were maybe not sure, and now you feel stuck in a commitment. Maybe you took on an extra role at work, and now you're maybe regretting that decision as you already had too much on your plate. Now, is it possible to let go of any of these commitments? So is there something on your list that maybe by removing could free up some space? If you didn't already have a commitment, would you take it on now? That's an easy way to figure it out if you're unsure. Now, I want you to think about what are the 3 most important things in your life. And I'm sure that you have more than 3 that you want to write down, but just for the sake of practicing essentialism, let's just try to find 3 of the most important things in your life. This could be a goal, a person, it could be yourself even, so don't feel scared to write that down if that's what resonates with you. And take a few moments to think about it. There's no need to rush. What are the 3 most important things to you? It could even be an idea like being healthy or being mindful. It could be a core value or belief. It doesn't have to be a tangible thing. Now consider how you've spent the last 24 hours. Does your schedule represent your true priorities? Has what you completed in the last 24 hours represent anything from those 3 most important things in your life? Or are you starting to see that maybe you made time for some non-essential things? Maybe some things that are fillers that kept you busy but not productive. Once again, being in the witness mind while journaling and meditating allows you to be free of judgment. So if you're noticing any judgment cropping up now, try to take a moment to take a deep breath and just remember that we are human and there's no need to feel bad about yourself for, let's say, if you have not made time for your most 3 important things, that's okay, it happens. but taking the time to journal about this and reflect on, you know, where we put our time and energy into. This is what makes us more efficient, more focused, more intentional in the way that we live. And maybe you're someone that was able to focus all your energy on your 3 most important things. And if that's you, congratulations, because that is really impressive. And that just means that you are living mindfully and intentionally, and you are doing a great job. So kudos if that's you. Even if you got one thing on your list, that's awesome. You should be very proud of that. And so, like I said before, I'm going to be sharing these slides with you after the workshop. So I'm going to stop the share for now. If you want to continue writing or expanding on this topic later, you certainly can. But I'd really like to guide you through a meditation to help with mental clarity and focus. Since we're talking about trying to determine what's most important in our lives, I think that it's a great way to end the workshop on a very productive and mindful note. So let's go ahead and find a comfortable seated position, whether that is on a chair, on the ground, sitting on props, a rolled blanket, a bolster, that meditation cushion that I was talking about earlier, if you have one. If sitting down does not feel restorative for you right now, please feel free to lay down either on a mat, on a couch, or the floor if that's comfortable for you. But find a way to be at least somewhat comfortable, because it's not going to sink in the same way if you're feeling uncomfortable. So wherever you're at, whether you're seated or laying down, find a straight spine. So let the energy have a clean channel to move through. And you can either soften the gaze, perhaps closing the eyes. Right away, start to notice if the head is in line with the heart and the heart in line with the hips. Stacking the bones if you're seated, or letting the spine melt into the earth if you're laying. Noticing any energetic residue in the mind, any thoughts that are buzzing around from everything that we've talked about in this workshop. Noticing how you feel physically in the body. And bringing awareness to any tension that exists. Noticing the natural pattern of your breath. Feeling the belly expand with each inhale and contract with each exhale. Bringing awareness to the tip of the nose as you take deep breaths now in and out through the nose. Maybe noticing the temperature of the breath, the coolness of the inhale, the warmth of the exhale. Check in with the spine. If you're seated, you may notice that you're leaning forward. See if you can bring the head back in space. Head over heart, heart over hips. Taking deeper breaths now, inhaling down into the low belly. Exhale, navel presses back towards spine. Inhale, low belly expands, rib cage flares. Exhale, everything hugs back in to the center line. Inhale, low belly. Rib cage flares. Breath moves up to chest and collarbones. Exhale to release. Riding the wave of breath in all three parts of the body, low lungs, middle lungs, upper lungs, and then back down. Let this breath, this three-part breath, Dirga breath, soothe you. Let it wash away anything that is non-essential from your life. Imagine this wave of breath cleansing and purifying your energetic space. Allowing this wave of breath to wash away, carry away anything that is blocking you from what is truly essential. Visualize this wave carrying away anything taking up space. Let go and allow the wave to carry it away. Staying with this three-part breath, allow yourself to set an intention. An intention for this next moon cycle. An intention that allows you to have more focus and more clarity on something that's important to you. Perhaps it's something that hasn't received much time or energy lately. Perhaps it's something that has gotten some time and energy, but not enough to really flourish and blossom into what it truly could be. Once you've brought awareness to this intention, silently repeat it to yourself 3 times. Let it be as short and sweet of a sentence as it possibly can be, leaving out anything that doesn't need to be there and just focusing on what's essential. Now take a deep breath in through the nose. Exhale, let it out with a soft sigh. Releasing any resistance to focusing on what's essential in your life. Continue taking deeper breaths, and with each exhale, allow yourself to release any more resistance to saying no when you need to. Letting go of resistance to setting boundaries to protect your time and space, your energy, and your focus. And as you continue to take these deep and nourishing breaths, you can slowly begin to open the eyes, keeping a soft gaze down the bridge of the nose. Begin to take in colors and textures. Anything that's around you, the earth, the floor, your mat, your feet. If you're laying down, perhaps you're looking up and gazing at the sky, your ceiling. something on a wall. Begin to take in all of these physical items around you. Bringing the hands to heart center, lifting the heart up to meet the thumbs, and keeping the head bowed down. Giving thanks to yourself for taking this time to focus on what's really important in your life, for taking time to grow and expand in ways that maybe you didn't know you could, for taking the time to be uncomfortable perhaps at times, and for taking the time to practice self-care. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and coming to these full moon circles. Your energy is such a vital contribution to the circle, and it would not be the same if not all of you are here. Love and light, my friends. Namaste.